right.
It's all right.
Here, I'm using your.
I'm
I'm so excited to tell my stories about the convention.
Good. Who's that slacker, Rick? All right, are we on? Good. Welcome, everybody. Tonight's our March 11th, 2019 regularly scheduled work session. And tonight we have 5 items on our agenda. Public comment is allowed that is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you're required to fill out a public comment card, and if you're speaking on behalf of an organization, you must fill out an affidavit that you have the authority of said organization. Please remember this is not the time to engage the mayor or members of city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Public comment will be heard at the beginning of the item. Once the item is called, no other public cards will be accepted. I'd also like to add an executive session to discuss land acquisition tonight, so if I could get a motion for that.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we add an executive session to discuss land acquisition after tonight's City Council work session.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, Councilmember Kuntz, with a second from Councilmember Bentley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimous with the 6 that are here. Rick is not here tonight. Okay. All right. City, if you will please call the first item, and then I'll ask if there's any public comment.
First item is discussion of the 2027 Parks and Recreation Draft Master Plan, and I do have 2 public comments.
Okay, if you would please call the first speaker.
First speaker is Terry O'Brien.
Council, hi Mayor, and thank you for having me. Nice to see all of you, especially this weather. Haven't been on the courts that much, but hopefully get some good weather. But ever since we changed,
Mr. O'Brien, if you just, for the record, if you don't mind, just stating
Yes,
your
sir.
name and address in the microphone.
Yes, sir. It's Terry O'Brien. My address is 2535 Bethany Church Road.
Thank you.
And ever since we finally decided to get the country club and make it into Milton Tennis Center, and we've been doing great with the response of the community, wanting lessons and wanting, to be on a team, and and then when we broke the deal with Alpharetta, now I'm getting almost a call a day for lessons and what teams you have available, and so that's really good. The bad news is we only have 4 courts. And to take on all this, I'm actually not turning people away, but it's hard when you want to add more teams and there are only 4 courts and people are all playing at once. It's hard to do that. But I'm doing the best I can to make it work for what we have now. We do have a possibility of resurfacing the courts, and that will also add to be able to add lines for the 10 and unders, and what that means is they make special lines in between the regular tennis lines so they can play, and that will also add for the little kids to create more teams and join new Alta teams. Alta is kind of the best way to get the most amount of people playing at once at all levels. So not just, we have competitive teams, we have beginner teams, we have intermediate teams, and it kind of serves everybody, they have their certain day that they practice and play. But we also have a large following with our juniors, with our clinics and beginner. Like you can sign up for a group ages 6 years old to 18, and we have certain days where they come. You can just take lessons. You don't have to be part of a team. that's growing rapidly too. And I've been working with Tom and Jim on designing something where they can just go on the internet and just pick a time and day and sign up that way to make it easier. Well, also, we have a large following of people just wanting to play for fun, but they also want to have something where, like a clubhouse or some sort of social place to have as well, and that we don't offer that right now because the clubhouse is closed. So I think if we can maybe possibility look into opening that or opening it up for someone to maybe lease for, like, you know, the restaurant part or the food service, that would kind of help the social part of people. A lot of people like to hang around after the matches and maybe have, you know, some sort of food and drinks available. With the pool, it kind of goes like that with the summer with the kids too. But it also has a safety and liability purpose. If the weather's bad, I have a place. Like on Friday night, there was a bad lightning storm, and I had to house everybody in the cars until their parents got there. So it'd be nice to open that up where they have a place to go for safety too. I'm just really excited, and so far, you know, working with Tom and Jim with the tennis program, they've been great, very supportive, and, you know, helping things grow and making changes, and just very proud to be working for the city of Milton and having the tennis communities. You guys really came through for all the community for that, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I did give a little chart, you guys got it. Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
sir. All right, Sudi, if you please call the next speaker.
Next speaker is Mr. Jason Pawlowski, and I do have an affidavit in my possession in which he is attesting he's going to speak on behalf of Cambridge Youth Lacrosse.
Hello. So my name is Jason Pawlowski, 2960 Manorview Lane. And as it was stated, I'm here to speak on behalf of Cambridge Youth Lacrosse. So I'm the president of Cambridge Youth Lacrosse and also the parent of two kids who play lacrosse and tennis and basketball and various sports. So I'm out at Bell Memorial about 5 to 7 nights a week. So you might recognize me from there if you're out there as well. But just wanted to say, talking on this point, so our Cambridge Youth Lacrosse program supports about 200 families, about 99% of which are all Milton. So it's a very healthy organization. Our numbers are very strong, and we continue to try to grow the sport of lacrosse within the city and give our kids an opportunity to experience the fun, the ability to develop their skills, and really all the good things out of youth sports that we all grew up with, learning how to be a leader, teamwork, and that kind of thing. A big part of that is having the facilities to do it at. So like I said, Bell Memorial has really been a great thing for our program. We consistently get positive feedback about Bell and the facilities. So the fact that we have turf fields and lighted fields means that we can maximize the amount of time that our kids are out there on the field. So we always get nothing but positive feedback from the families about their experiences at Bell. I'd say the only criticism that we consistently get is when there's a lack of availability. So that means either we have to practice early in the afternoon or late into the evening, or even maybe drive 30 to 45 minutes to other cities' facilities to play. So the demand from our program, we already see that the facilities as they are stretched to their capacity and beyond. So because of that, we have to get creative with what we do. But again, you know, we very much appreciate what we have, but realize that with our current demand, we already are exceeding the capacity. So when I look at that plan, I say we definitely support the proposals for long-term and short-term expanding of capacity when it comes to the rectangular fields, especially turfed and with lights. And the long-term plans are great, but definitely there's an immediate need. So I know there was words in there about short-term addressing it as well, and just want to say that we definitely support that so we can get the program as it is today and be able to expand capacity in the short term and long term. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Sudi, do we have any more public comment?
That's all, sir.
Okay, if you'll please call the first item. Or I may have already asked you to do that, didn't I?
Yes. And Mr. Tom McElveen.
And I do want to say before Tom speaks, thank you to the board members that are here tonight. So. You look nice in a coat, Tom.
Oh, you've probably never seen me in
I
one.
haven't.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you guys know, this process began in 2017. This master plan will get us through 2027. I will let you know at the last Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting, the board approved this plan. And without further ado, Steve Provo and Steve Fritz from Barge Design Solutions.
Thank you, Tom. Mayor, Council, I'm Steve Provo. I'm with Barge Design Solutions, and we have had the pleasure of working with your citizens and the staff at the Parks Department and other members of your city staff to develop a 10-year comp plan for your park system. And I'm going to give you an overview of what is in the document that we have produced. It is a very detailed plan. I hope you've had a chance to review it, but I'm going to go over some of the pieces of it and open it up for any questions you might have about the plan as well. But I'll point out that this is a high-level presentation here. So if there's any questions you have about any pieces of it, I'll be happy to go into more detail for you. So we worked with the city of Milton and two sub-consultants on this project. Both of them are national firms in this area of work, Pros Consulting and ETC Institute. Pros Consulting worked with us on the planning components of the project, and ETC conducted the community survey that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about shortly. So we were the team. I worked on the project as the project manager. I'm here with my colleague, Steve Fritz, who will be available if you have questions after I finish this piece of it. This is the planning process, a graphic of the planning process. It's essentially a 5-piece process. We start out with research and analysis of your park system and your parks department. We conduct a community outreach portion of the project that I'll go into some details about to show you what we did. We performed a needs assessment of your park system and programs. And then we created a development plan and recommendations for the next 10 years for the growth of your city parks department and an implementation plan. And the outcome of that is the document that we have produced for you. As part of the research and analysis portion of it, we dug deep into the demographics of your city. An important part of what we looked at was really just the population, about where you were when we started this process and where it was expected that your population was going to grow. And the numbers for that are important because we base a lot of the recommendations for growth on those numbers. And so what we found, the estimated projection is almost 22% growth over a 10-year period. The community outreach portion of the project included 3 primary pieces. We had focus group meetings, we had public input meetings, and we had the a community survey portion of the project. For the focus groups, we spent 2 solid days meeting with groups. We met with 11 different groups for sit-down meetings to talk about what was important to them, and got a lot of important feedback back from them about the department and what their interests are. These were stakeholders in many of the parks. And a lot of the information that they gave to us drove how we presented the public meeting presentations. They gave us an indication of what we ought to be looking for, what is probably going to be important to the rest of the community, and we used that to get feedback from the public, and we also used it to formulate the community survey instrument. We did 2 public input workshops that we utilized to get feedback from the public, and we gleaned some of the high points from that are shown here. And what we heard from the community in those meetings was people were interested in enhancements to Birmingham Park, your biggest park, trails between and inside of your parks, acquire new parkland, new sports fields, and there was interest in a multi-generational indoor center as well. So that was one way that we got information from the public, directly from them. The other way was to conduct a statistically valid survey. And this is a survey that was done in such a way that you can depend on the responses. What was done was we worked with ETC, as I mentioned, and 3,000 surveys were mailed out randomly across the population to get responses back. And what we were looking for was about 400 completed surveys. We got over that, which allows us to have a confidence level of around 95% in the feedback that we heard from them. So we can put a lot of emphasis on the data that we gleaned from the survey. At a high level, some of the things that we heard from them was that 85% of your population uses the trails. The trails are a critical piece of what people are interested in Milton. 91% of the population uses parks in general. Now, that isn't necessarily just the city parks, but they use parks, city, county, or state parks in this area. Also of note is 91% of the people rated the parks, the Milton parks, as excellent or good, which is above the national benchmark of 85%. And 21% of your population is utilizing the recreation programs, and that's a little bit lower than the national average. So that indicates an area where we wanted to emphasize some improvements and ways to do that in the plan. In that survey, 77% of the people wanted more opportunities for walking, hiking, and biking, so trails between and inside of parks. There was an interest in large community parks as well as small neighborhood parks, specifically those scales. And a large percentage, more than half your population, is interested in natural areas and wildlife habitats. And we heard that both in the public meetings and through this survey. The other thing we do is when we do these surveys, we ask people what they would like to see in the parks, but then we also want to ask them what are they willing to pay for, which sometimes is 2 different answers. So we try to check those and see what responses we get. And these are the top 5 responses we got for funding. Add or enhance walking, biking, and hiking trails, enhance existing parks with upgraded new facilities, enhance Birmingham Park, acquire new parkland in underserved areas, and enhance Providence Park. We asked them if what they would do with $100 of funding, how would they allocate that to make these improvements? And what we got back was the primary area that people are interested in, I'm circling right now with the cursor, is to acquire and develop new walking and biking trails. That's consistent with what people had asked for, and to maintain and improve the existing park system. So those are the 2 of the highest interest things. The other high percentage was for other. And other, in some cases, were things that didn't have anything to do with parks at all. Sometimes they were improved traffic or don't make any changes to the parks or don't spend money on them. We specifically asked about Birmingham Park. This is your biggest park, and lots of people have interest in what happens out there. So we asked the question of what would you like to see done at Birmingham Park? And what's really interesting is that the responses we got showed a very even split across the population of how and what to do out there. So if you look at the top areas here for feedback, one of them is leave the park undeveloped at 12%, and the other is focus on passive recreation uses at 33%. So that's 45% of your responses wanted either not developed or passive development. Then if you look down here, focus on active recreation uses, that's 7%, or focus on a mix of active and passive recreation uses at 38%. So that's also 45%. So if you put those together, your population was exactly split on leaving it either all undeveloped or passively developed, or put in active or a mix of active and passive recreation. So we utilize the feedback that we get from the public as well as our own observations and create some priority rankings for the facilities and for the programs in your park system, and we rate them simply at high priority, medium priority, or low priority. And we have a specific weighting system for determining these, and it matches, we have some of our data is quantitative, it's quantifiable, and that's 70% of the weight for these. And then some of it's qualitative, either elements that we heard from the public or opinions of the consulting team. And we put those together to come up with these rankings of what the community is interested in. So for facilities and amenities, on your high priority is, again, walking trails, large community parks, natural habitat areas, small neighborhood parks, a multi-generational rec center, off-leash dog parks, boating and fishing areas, outdoor tennis courts, pavilions and picnic shelters, facilities and amenities for special needs, and outdoor swimming pools and water parks. Medium ranking for facilities and amenities is playgrounds and rectangular fields, multi-use fields, soccer, lacrosse, football. And low ranking, and these are ranked as low, it doesn't mean that they are unimportant, they just ranked lower than the other priorities. The low rankings were indoor sports fields, indoor tennis, indoor basketball, outdoor basketball, youth baseball, and softball, equestrian facilities, outdoor sand volleyball courts, skate parks, and adult softball fields. The priority rankings for programs and activities for their high-ranking ones, they're walking, jogging, biking, adult fitness, wellness programs, nature programs, simply just visiting parks, youth sports, outdoor recreation and adventure programs, including fishing, and socialization with dogs. There were more high-ranked priorities. Swimming, and this is more like learn-to-swim programs and also water fitness and swim teams. Tennis, youth out-of-school programs, adult, senior programs, recreation experiences for individuals with special needs, and picnicking. At medium priority for programs and activities, we have special events, that's community events, adult arts and crafts programs, youth fitness and wellness programs, youth arts and crafts. And then the low priorities for the programs and activities include youth gymnastics and cheerleading, equestrian programs, preschool programs, adult and youth drama and performing arts programs, and martial arts programs. So we utilize this information as well as the data and the demographic information that we had put together in our inventory of your park system, and we look at the inventory to start to create a basis of recommendations. And what we're showing is we analyze the amount of acreage that is available, and your combination of developed parks and undeveloped parks is 447.8 acres. And then there's also 10.8 acres of school park inventory that's available to the city for a total inventory of 458.6 acres. This is important because what we do is we create a level of service, a recommended level of service for the city to be functioning at, and this is presented as a number of acres per 1,000 population. Your current level of service for parks is 5 acres per thousand. And this plan proposes a recommendation of 12.5 acres per thousand to grow to over the next 10 years. And with what that would mean is you would end up with 473. You would need 473 acres of parkland today to meet that standard, considering all the developed and undeveloped parkland that you have. You're 15 acres short. As the population grows over the next 10 years, that proposed parkland recommendation is going to be 557. So you'd be 117 acres short. And what's important about this acreage is that it needs to meet the needs of what has been requested by the citizenry. So in some cases, that's sports fields, and in other cases, it's natural areas. So not all land is appropriate for sports fields. So we take that information of how much acreage is recommended, and then we also look at where is it recommended. This is a what we would call a gap analysis. This is showing your existing park system with service areas on each of the parks. A service area is, depending on the type of park, it impacts an area around it of the population of either a quarter mile, a half a mile, or a mile. And so that's what those different zones are. And so if you look at the parts of the city of Milton that don't have any of those service areas on them, that shows you where the city currently doesn't have service for parks or is underserved. And what we do is we focus on not just those areas, but those areas that are also in your highest growth areas of the city, which would be in the southern portions of it and the southwestern portion of the city. Based on that information, we came up with a series of recommendations for the park system over the next 10 years. And at a high level, I'll go over what those are. They include land acquisition, as I just mentioned, acquiring 117 acres of new land. This process is already happening. There's new land that was recently acquired at Lackey Road. The land should primarily be in the southwestern and southeastern portions of the city, and the greatest needs are for community parks and neighborhood parks. For new parks facilities, an active and recreation park, multi-generational indoor facility, and lots of trails and greenways. Improvements to your existing or undeveloped parks include Birmingham Park. We looked at that closely, and based on the feedback that we had gotten during public input meetings, this plan is not recommending changes to Birmingham Park at this time. What we do recommend is improvements to Providence Park. The master planning process has been completed for that, so implementation of that plan should be a top priority. And they will also recommend master plans for Milton Country Club. That's already in process. Mayfield Lake Park and Mayfield Road Park, master plans for each of those. For programs and services, recommendations include implementing classification of services and cost recovery goals. This will help focus on the programs elements in the parks department to hopefully increase usage by the population. You recall that number was low. Add recreation staff as the growth requires. Refine program offerings to reduce low enrollment programs, and expand programs and services in areas of the greatest demand, which are detailed in the document. In operations, our recommendations include maintenance. Observe that the maintenance is contracted out, and then what we have found is that the cost of that maintenance is in line with best practices. So that's good news. There are strong maintenance standards in place currently, which is resulting in your high rate of satisfaction across the population. And we recommend that continually be checked. So continually compare the vendor for best value of parks maintenance and create work plans based on the maintenance standards. The capital improvement plan is detailed, and I'm not going to go into all the details for it now, but what I will cover here is that What we do identify, there are a number of ways to pay for this system, and their primary funding options include grants, park foundation, capital improvements fees, park impact fees, bond issues, capital fund, and partnerships. So there's a lot of information in what it will cost to implement these changes over the next 10 years, and when those plans should be implemented, and potential ways to pay for them. The conclusions of the plan is we have been able to create a document that is a roadmap. This is going to be a usable document for your Parks Department and for you to make decisions about new facilities over the next 10 years in the park system. Implementation of plans for existing undeveloped park plans should be your top priority, and funding, looking at unique ways of funding, because of course funding is always a challenge when you're running a city, and there's lots of other things that need attention as well. But what we're convinced of is when implemented, these recommendations are going to add to the quality of life in Milton, and the feedback we got from the public when we were talking with them and with the staff is that they love this parks department. I mean, this park system, and they do love the department as well, and want to see it grow, and they want to be able to utilize it more. So great feedback from the public, and that's the end of what I have to present, and I would love to answer any questions you might have. I'd like to ask my colleague, Steve Fritz, to join me. Steve was really the primary author of this document, and so between the two of us, we ought to be able to answer anything you might have.
All right, questions?
Yeah, one.
All right.
Just one simple one. Was North Park included in the developed stuff?
No.
Because on that map it looked like it was. I was
No,
okay.
that's an Alpharetta Park.
Okay,
North
yeah, I just
Park
wanted
is
to
an
make sure.
Alpharetta Park. Out, none of Alpharetta's facilities went.
Okay.
We
That
did
was-
look at it as at the service area.
Okay.
What you saw was the that Mayfield Park that we purchased in conjunction with Alpharetta that is currently it's not being used yet.
I thought I saw it on the map, so
Right.
that makes sense. Okay.
No, we did not include that because it's owned and operated by a different city.
Okay, Carol?
A gentleman. So I'm curious about Birmingham Park and the statistic of 38% that would like to see some development there. How were those questions framed? Because if it's framed as just that they know of Birmingham Park and they're hungry for activities, then Birmingham Park would be the only place they could envision those activities. But were the questions framed such that if other park facilities were available or if other things come online?
No, it specifically asked how they would want to see Birmingham Park developed. It did not reference any contingencies associated with other things happening.
Okay, so no frame of reference
No,
of
ma'am.
what else could be built on other land that
No,
would
ma'am.
not disturb that natural land?
Correct.
That's right.
Okay.
And if I remember correctly, was that 38% active and passive mix?
Correct.
It was.
So
Correct.
it's hard to say if 38, half and half, or, okay.
So you have
So
roughly,
the document states that if us looking at it as a consultant, that's really the only place you have right now that you could develop active parkland. And so we listened to the community and the staff, and at this point, we did not go forward with the recommendation to do anything there. Now, there's some things there that could be done. It'd be very reasonable from a planning standpoint. The land would allow it, et cetera, but we didn't make a recommendation in that regard at this time.
but it's possible that that's a sentiment in a snapshot.
It
That
could
if other
be.
things come online, that number could go way down or it could go way up.
Sure.
But it's
That's right.
likely to go way down if other things came online. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And so roughly 45% say leave it alone, with 51% saying that they appreciate natural space within the city.
Well, 45% didn't say leave it
We have
alone.
12% that said leave
Leave
it
it
natural.
alone.
The other said passive,
That's right.
which is roughly leaving it alone, right?
Well, it does include, passive does include development. I mean, it's trails
Some
and
trails,
it's,
yeah.
it's anything, you're not playing with sticks and balls out there, but there's a lot of other
Yeah,
things that
yeah,
can be
things
done.
like that, things for people. yeah.
Playgrounds and
Right.
so forth, picnic shelters.
But with a movement towards preservation, natural presentation, because you also had a large number of people who wanted environmental education.
Right.
Which you really can't do that anywhere other than a natural place. So,
And Providence, there is some things scheduled for
Right.
Providence in the master plan in that regard from an environmental education standpoint.
yeah. What I'm interested in and trying to find a balance on, and perhaps you can help, is preserving our, quote, rural heritage, and then carving everything up to accommodate everybody, rather than drawing a line in the sand and saying, okay, this one is to be preserved, and it's not going to be a mix, and this one is going to be a mix. And I think that's something that has to evolve over time.
Right.
But your language was such that you sound disappointed in the plan that it's not going to be a mixed-use facility at this time.
No, what we try to do is balance needs, and there's clearly a need for active facilities now. And so the only land that you have that could accommodate that would be Birmingham Park. But so just from a planning standpoint, if we didn't have public input involved, that's what a planner would say. But we heard the public input, and that's the reason we crafted the recommendations the way that we did.
And then over time, as other properties maybe come online, would you resurvey? What would be your natural progression to figure this out? Would you resurvey people, or would?
Well, if you did it, I mean, it depends on what kind of progress you make over time. I mean, if you're making progress acquiring land, you're making progress in building new facilities,
IGAs.
and you get the IGAs renegotiated, et cetera, and you make progress in that after 5 years, you may want to do another survey.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much.
I hope I answered your questions.
You did.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I thought I saw kind of an interesting contradiction in one sense, and obviously you have your high priorities as far as land use, and you had your high priorities versus programs, right? And so it was interesting. I saw that you had the low priority of land use was sports fields, and yet a high priority of programs was the youth sports.
Correct.
Right, and so I think we have that's, as far as our community goes, that identifies in my mind the contradiction that we have to come to grips with. That's what it is.
Well, I'll tell you, we did do the survey, so you typically, on the qualitative side of things, you don't usually see much emphasis and input coming from the community on the qualitative side from youth sports folks, because they're not the ones that are coming to the meetings, and they're not the ones that, so that's one of the reasons that you see that dichotomy occasionally. But clearly your youth sports programs and so forth are much in demand, and particularly on the multi-use fields, the fields on Bell Memorial are way overused. So there really is a demand for youth sports facilities here in this community.
Mm-hmm.
Laura?
Yeah. So I'd like to thank you. I know that I feel really confident about the process that you undertook with the survey and the focus groups. Specifically, in this report, you had the detailed comments from each stakeholder that participated, and it was helpful to me to go through and look at those because there's nuances in those comments. So I appreciate staff's work and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board as well. I know they've been working hard with you all. I do have a few comments and then maybe some suggestions. I think that what I felt best about was that we kept seeing over and over again between 77 and 85%, trail usage, and that we are planning for that. And I think as a council, we're trying to acquire green space that has some trails on it so that we can meet that need. And I think as our population grows, which you included, that aging trend, that's not something that people are going to age out of. I think people are always going to want to walk on the trails. So I feel real confident in that direction. With regard to Birmingham Park, I understand Councilmember Cookerly's direction, and I too would not want to water down Birmingham Park in totally understanding that we have a gap in active fields. And I hope that we can, in some way, mediate that gap immediately, and then also in some form or fashion in central or southern Milton with a park acquisition partnership, something like that. Because the thing that's so special about Birmingham Park is that if it is an equestrian destination, active sports and horses really just don't go together. So I appreciate you detailing that input with the community and capturing it in your report. Just a few other comments. Just in general to our staff, the Milton Country Club, we heard from the tennis pro out there, and he's doing a phenomenal job with the tennis program on 4 courts. If we can try to get them resurfaced, I know we've got a grant in place. That would be awesome. And then also just some shelter. I think those priorities are more for safety reasons, and I know that we want to be safe. Also agree that our trails at Providence Park could also provide nature camps. Those what's the term that the LCO or the utilization of your park land? It's considered
level of service.
Levels of service. Okay, so we're seeing that we have a gap, but I think that if we considered, Birmingham Park developed and we did some facilities there that accommodated the use, the number would look better. And so I hope that that's something that we can accommodate in the future. I saw the trailhead on Wood Road, and I just would like to suggest that perhaps we want to direct in all of our passive and green space areas to park in parking areas that are already there, public parking, perhaps at Birmingham Falls, and then also we have a small footprint at the Fulton County School property on Freemanville that could offload some of the intense parking issues that we have in some of our most utilized trail areas. Then going back to the active use gap, it seems like we need several multi-use fields, baseball fields and softball fields. And on your in your data, it seemed like everything was declining. Football, baseball. I'm not saying that we don't need the fields. I'm just saying that lacrosse is increasing. And so with regard to making sure that we plan for that growing sport, I just would want to make sure that we've got lacrosse fields in our gap analysis.
Well, luckily, those lacrosse fields can be used for various other uses.
Okay,
so they're not exclusive for lacrosse.
Wonderful. That's that. And then turfing and lighting, what we have here already. I think we had some success at Birmingham United Methodist. I know we can hopefully do more with the high schools. There's fields sitting there that could be utilized immediately to solve some of these problems. I support the multi-generational facility. I think that's something that will be very unique to Milton. And then finally, I'm sitting here looking at Tom. I couldn't not say this. Funding for personnel staffing and the maintenance as we acquire all this green space, which will serve as our trail system. We are going to need to do some serious planning, and I think that even talking about a bond issuance for some of these active fields might be in line for us.
So if I could make a couple observations based on your comment. First, I want to clarify something. My compatriot here, and I do this myself, your current level of service is actually 12.1 acres per thousand, okay? And we're recommending 12.5. The amount of developed parkland that you have is 5 acres per thousand. So you don't really have a land problem. You've got a park development problem, and you have a problem with the land that you have not being suitable for the development of active recreation facilities. So that's where the issue really lies, is in those two areas. The other thing I just wanted to point out, we didn't lead anyone about any of these facilities. So that multi-gen facility was something that completely was derived from the comments that we received in the focus groups and so forth. We didn't, that wasn't something that we suggested. It was things that were brought up in the public input process.
Anybody else? Thank you both for being here.
Thank you all very much.
Anybody, Scott, any comments from Parks Board? If not, thank you guys for all your hard work, and Tom and your whole department. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Sudi, if you'll please call the next item.
Next item is discussion of RZ 1901, amendment to section 64.1, definitions, and section 64.395, uses prohibited in all zoning districts as it relates to vape shops. Mr. Parag Agarwal.
Do we have any public comment, Sudi?
We do not, sir.
Sorry, Parag.
That's
Not being read.
Hi, I'm Parag Agarwal, City's Community Development Director, and today I'm here to present you a zoning text amendment that will prohibit the opening of the new vape shops in the city of Milton. As I mentioned, the purpose of this text amendment is to prohibit vape shops in the city of Milton. These legal but unregulated products typically are sold in convenience stores or vape shops, and they contain ingredients that are known to be harmful. So as part of this text amendment, we are defining the vape shops in our zoning code. And as you can see, this has been written by the attorneys. The vape shop means any business whose primary product line for retail sale is alternative nicotine products or vape juice or both. And then we are also defining what alternative nicotine products are. It says alternative nicotine products refer to any products or devices that employ an electronic heating element, power source, electronic circuit, battery, or other electronic, chemical, or mechanical means to produce a vapor that delivers nicotine to the person inhaling from the device, including e-cigarettes, e-cigars, e-hookahs, e-bongs, and e-pipes, whether manufactured, distributed, marketed, or sold as an e-cigarette, e-cigar, or e-pipe. Then we are also defining what the vape juice is. Vape juice refers to any liquid that contains compounds containing pharmaceutical-grade vegetable glycerine, propylene glycol, nicotine, food-grade flavoring, and water, and can be used for vaping by means of an alternative nicotine product. So many options these days, right? We are also defining what the word primary is. For the purpose of this code section, the word primary shall mean that alternative nicotine products, vape juice, or both constitute at least 50% of the business aggregate retail sales. So the word is 50%. So then we are also basically prohibiting these vape shops from throughout all the zoning categories. So right now we have this in all zoning districts, the following uses are considered to be objectionable and are prohibited. It includes fortune-telling establishments, massage shops, pool hall, escort and dating services, and now we are including vape shops. So currently, the city of Milton has one vape shop, which is located at 522 North Main Street. And since this business is grandfathered in, so it will continue to do business. So this text amendment was heard by the Planning Commission on February 27th, and they proposed few suggestions. Number one was whether we can adjust the definition of primary and change it to substantial. They wanted this 50% should go down to any significant number, but they thought 50% might be too high. Second, consider the minimum age for purchase to be 21 instead of 18. Number third, consider the word electronic be substituted for the reference to E in the listing of types of device. And number fourth, to include the verbiage that basically says for the purpose of this section, before the reference to proceed the terms alternative nicotine products and vape juice. So we have discussed these recommendations with our city attorneys, and their recommendation is, number one, if the city council wants to, instead of using the word primary and they want to use the word substantial, and they want to pick a number, let's say 40% or 25%, they will be fine with that. But again, for now, we have, when we say primary, it's 50%. But we do not have any definition that basically says what substantial means. Number second, consider minimum age to be 21 instead of 18. It's a state law. So the city attorney's recommendation is just leave this to be 21 for now. And number third was like, instead of electronic, use the word E. We are fine with that if E makes more sense. Yes. And number four, they thought it's already covered. It does not really have to be added. Yes.
Laura, do you have a question?
Yeah, so you said state law is 18? Or
State
21?
law is 21, right?
State law is 18. Just
State law is,
backwards.
okay, state law is,
State law is 18.
Okay, so
the
you're
recommendation from Planning Commission was to raise that to 21.
yes, 21, yes.
But we can't do that, or,
According to our attorneys, I don't believe we can. Is that
I just want to make sure I understood.
Keep it equal to state law.
maybe should
So,
not is the term.
in lowering the percentage, I guess I would ask in Forsyth County, which is the model that we're using, what's the percentage there? Do we know that?
I'm not sure what the percentage is in Forsyth County, if
We
this
can
was
check
modeled
that.
after.
Yeah, we can check that.
Sure.
Yeah, we can check on it.
So,
Carol?
Parag, so we also forbid fortune telling?
This is what I got to know. Like,
I was
That's your
thinking
current
that-
ordinance.
I was thinking that was my second career, so I'm gonna
but
scratch that.
it cannot be a primary business.
Oh, the subtle difference, okay. All right,
You can
thank
tell, as long as it's 40%, 50%
Yeah,
vape.
I guess it could be a front for something else, okay. I like this.
Okay.
This is kind of being proactive.
Yeah, no, I think it's smart.
Got a quick question. Is 50%, it has retail sales, is that volume or is that dollars?
It's retail sales. That means the dollars, right? It's dollars.
Okay.
Have to be done.
And the next question on that is how do we do that? Do we go and ask for the numbers, or what do
Yeah.
how do we enforce that? Look at that. What's the deal there?
Yeah.
Do we have them provided that information, or what?
Steve helped me out over here, but in my previous jobs, the way it used to work, when the business license used to be get renewed every year, they used to give us the receipts and the booklet. I don't know how it
I
happens.
apologize. I was looking up Forsyth County's ordinance. I didn't hear the question.
So how do we determine that? How do we trust a business to show us what that 50% number is or close to with regards to these products? Are they going to?
Do we audit,
How do we audit it?
Yeah.
I can't answer that question right now, but I can get you the answer.
And that would be something we would need to know. Even if we come up with a lower percentage, how can we audit that?
As you
I
mentioned,
would think, too, just common sense, it would be pretty obvious when, you go into a store and as our city employees or police officers and citizens go in there, if they're doing 50%, there's going to have to be a lot of shelf space, and you would see it. But again, if you can get us the answer on
I'll get
technically
you.
how we do that.
I was going to surmise what you just said, but then I didn't want to. I'm not 100% sure, and I don't want to give you bad information.
The concern I would have is, they might add some service to their retail establishment as well that could skew the numbers or something like that. So there's a lot of ways around that.
Cleaning your vape
Oh,
pipe.
there you go. Exactly. So you didn't have no idea. So just an honest question. How can we audit that? I don't know the answer to that, but I figured you guys would figure it
so
out.
as I mentioned, like again, these 5 or 6 uses and I came from DeKalb County. So the way we used to work is like when these businesses used to come for their renewing the licenses. At that time, we used to look at their booklets and see what the sale amount is. That might be one way.
Joe?
So, Parag, do we know if let's pretend for a second we pass this, it goes into effect. Is the one vape shop that's in Milton, is it out of business based on this law?
No, sir. So again, it will be a grandfathered use. So it will continue to do business. Once it stops doing business for amount of 6 months, then it can, yeah.
So is there a rule or a problem with us just, rather than arguing about what percentage sales is, because I would agree with Councilman Coons, everybody's just going to game the system. So they'll work around it however they can. Can we just not let anybody sell that stuff?
Well, I think the issue is like a gas station, for example. Or just
we just
I'm
took
cool with
steps.
that.
We just
I'm
took
cool with
steps
that.
to outlaw the sale of other products that are legally manufactured in the United States.
So that's my question: is can we go to let's say every gas station here is selling the Juul products? Can we proactively ban that in Milton? Is that what you're saying? So, yeah. Okay.
Let's ask attorneys.
Well, I think we asked that question, didn't we? If we could just outright ban the product altogether from a sale in Milton. Now, I'm speaking secondhand because I did not have this conversation with our attorneys, but I was told that we can't outright ban it. However, if you have the ability to go below 50, I haven't been told what that low threshold is. Is it at 1? Exactly.
Why don't I step in and suggest this, and Jeff, and maybe your office, and together with our staff, if you guys can come back to us, Parag, with, number one, if we can, if we can or can't ban the product, or if we could consider doing that, and also then on the percentage, if we could move that percentage down.
Yes.
Laura?
And I didn't see in the text, this is for all zoning districts?
Yes,
Does that
all
need to
zoning
be written?
districts, yes.
Okay.
I wanted to add something real quick, if you don't mind. I did find in Forsyth County's ordinance that it is 50% there, and it talks about it as being primary. So I just wanted to let you know what that found out.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
All right, Sudi, if you'd please call the next item and let me know if we have any public comment.
Next item is discussion of storage buildings for Public Works and the Fire Department. Chief Robert Edgar and Ms. Sarah Leaders, and there is no public comment.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, myself and Chief Edgar will be presenting, but we also have Bob Buscemi, our city architect, and Roddy Moats, our Public Works manager here, that are available if there's any specific questions related to these proposed buildings. So the process so far, we tried a bid on this project in September of 18. We did it as a design build type of bid. We didn't have any responses. That type of contract's usually around $1 million. So then we started looking at the state contract process, and Bob's modified the specifications and gotten the cost within our allocated budget for these buildings. On March 5th, we went to the design review board, and then we're here tonight to present, and there will be a future consent agenda item for approval after this discussion. So a little bit on the property history where these buildings will be located. Within the Birmingham Park area, in January of 2007, there was a quitclaim deed transferring the park property to the city, and the parcels associated with that deed were subject to the restrictive covenants of the park, except for what's the gray area on this map here, which is described as the Hickory Flat Fire Station property. It's approximately 33 acres.
And just let me butt into, for anybody new on council and Carol's benefit,
Yeah, I don't know.
while it's from the surfaces, Birmingham Park is all that area. As Sarah's saying, there is a 33 acres that.
Is it that whole lavender or
Yes,
that gray?
yes.
Yes.
So,
Okay, so that whole thing is 33 acres?
correct.
Yes.
The average person in the middle of the park, you wouldn't know it, but that actually goes with the fire station property.
Okay.
And so that area is currently under Fulton County Facilities, a lease agreement to the city, and we're set to fully acquire that land this year. So again, this is that outline of that area representing the facilities property and shows the approximate locations of the two storage buildings. Then I'll talk a little bit about the Public Works building. So over the last 12 years, we've acquired the equipment and materials, supplies to maintain our public infrastructure system. Currently, we have those stored here at City Hall, at one of the storage buildings at Bell Park, and then at the Public Works yard behind Station 43. And the Station 43 is where our field crews, where they set up for the daily responding to work request. And then using that facility as well, we're going to need to look at utilities with the building. So power, septic, and a well for water. This is a overview of the Public Works building. It does have a 2-bay doors, a small break area, and a restroom. And this is another rendering of the building and what it could look like. The pictures on the left are looking at the location of the building. One's from inside the yard and one is from the park access road. On the right-hand side, we've identified an area for some additional landscape screening that is near the overhead power line. So we'd look at some low height landscaping for screening there. And you can see the proposed building location and then relocating some of the storage bins. And now I'll turn it over to Chief Edgar to talk about the fire building.
And then let me just make a comment too, Sarah. It looks like, and again, the existing facility is fairly screened, but we'll make sure that this is screened too for park goers as they go around. Won't look in the back of the building. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The fire stations currently are housing our frontline and fire apparatus, our reserve fire apparatus, as well as the tools and equipment that we use on a regular basis. And basically what we've done is we've run out of room. There's no more room to put anything else in these stations. We have equipment and supplies that are spread out throughout our 3 stations, and where they need to be more centrally located, where we can adequately maintain those pieces of equipment and tools, as well as have accountability for all of that equipment. One of the other things that we do on a regular basis is we perform our own maintenance and repairs on a lot of our equipment, and we don't have an ideal or functional space to perform those that type of maintenance work. So basically, we need a storage building. And here is Station 43 as an example of our current situation. And as you can see, there's almost every available space taken up with either equipment, training tools, weight equipment, and what we're doing here is we've created an environment where in the event that our firefighters are going to a call, they move with purpose once those tones go off at the station, and they have to walk around and dodge this equipment that's sitting in between the fire apparatus, and it's certainly not ideal. This particular station of 43 houses 6 pieces of equipment, and when I say equipment, I mean fire apparatus, which does not include all the other training pieces that we have here and the other tools and such. The proposed location for our training, our training, boy, did that come back. Sorry about that. But our storage building is the area right behind the fire station. It's in the wooded area. As you can see, it's 280 feet from New Bullpen Road, and it gives us direct access into that area through our driveway through the back of the station. It sits back in the wooded area, so the visibility from Hickory Flat Road is almost minimal. And driving by the station, going into Birmingham Park, you're only going to see some of the doors that are going to be sitting there to where we can access the building itself. Here's a rendering of the building. This is just an example of the picture of what the building may look like. It's a 30 by 40 building, one bay door, and you can see the proposed location where it comes right in off the driveway of the station into the rear. And you can see the tree line that actually goes to the front of the station, where we would not disturb any of that except for the one area where the station or the storage building is going to be placed. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions?
Mayor, if I could, do we have the recommendations from DRB?
We do. I think there it is. I'm sorry. There was another slide added. We did present this to DRB. I lost something. There it is. And their recommendation was, they supported the idea. The recommendation was have this painted in a burnt red color so it kind of goes with the Milton environment of a barn.
No, wait, that's for the fire department. There's
Has nothing to do
no
with the
pun
fire.
intended with the burnt red, is there?
But that was their recommendation for the proposal that we presented to them last week. So.
Okay. Anybody else?
I have
Carol?
a question. Chief,
Sure.
does this put all of your equipment in the closest proximity to where it'll be used? Or is this the best spot given that you have the land there? Or do you actually need land elsewhere too?
No, actually, this location is ideal because our logistics officer is stationed at 43 in admin. And a lot like what you saw with Public Works, our office looks like a warehouse sometimes with stuff coming in, being delivered and such. So having this location here with our logistics officer stationed there in the admin side of the office, this is ideal where he can bring the equipment in, still inventory everything, as well as distribute it out to the stations, and also perform the maintenance and repairs that we do. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Laura?
I just wanted to, I had a call today, just wanted to confirm on the land that's within the park, the 33 acres. So that transfers over to us this year, and there's no restrictions on that as far as use or anything.
Not on the fire department parcel.
That's, I like the red. I have a question more on the public works side. The old barn that's further away from where the public works facility is. Do we have a plan for that? That's obviously on this 33 acres.
I believe that was deemed to be not usable and was going to be removed at some point. Is that correct?
Well, and I'm just noticing that it's getting cleaned up back there, and that's great because there's a lot of stuff piling up back there. So I encourage us to keep that going. And then also just, I'm there a lot. I think that a fence around the public works area would be good. It's not hard to get in there if you wanted to. It also might be a safety issue just to keep the footprint of what we're doing there contained. Those are my suggestions. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, City, if you will call the next item, and do we have any public comment?
Next item is discussion of a Livable Centers Initiative grant opportunity for Deerfield. We do not have any public comment. Mr. Parag Agrawal.
Hi, I'm Parag Agrawal, City's Community Development Director, and today I'm here to present you a proposal of a grant application to update our Deerfield LCI plan. I also have with me our Principal Planner, Michelle McIntosh-Ross, and she will serve as the project manager if we are successful in getting this grant application, grant funding. LCI. LCI stands for Livable Centers Initiative. It's a grant program developed by Atlanta Regional Commission, that's ARC, which serves as the region's MPO, that's the Metropolitan Planning Commission, and is funded by the federal transportation dollars. The main goal of these LCI programs are, number one, is to create vibrant, walkable, and healthy communities throughout the region. And number second is to create complete streets, which basically means the streets are not only for cars, but also for pedestrians. To improve the land use policy, healthy lifestyles, improved access to jobs and services, and increased community engagement. So once the area gets designated as LCI, it also opens the doors for additional funding, which comes from the state or other regional resources. Every year, ARC comes up with their own set of priorities for that program year. So for 2019, their priorities are access to healthy food, creative placemaking, green infrastructure, historic preservation, housing affordability, lifelong communities, which basically means aging in place, smart communities, and workforce development. And these 4 stars, which is creative placemaking, green infrastructure, lifelong communities, and smart communities, we want the focus of our applications should be these four issues. Currently, Milton has 2 designated LCI areas. The first one is the Deerfield LCI area, which you can see on the right. We received the funding from ARC in 2011. At that time, we worked with City of Alpharetta on this LCI plan. Around 29% of the LCI area is in Alpharetta, and around 71% is in Milton. We also have a second LCI in downtown Crabapple, which is shown on this circle towards the left. So a number of projects have been completed that were part of this 2012 LCI plan, and those projects have been very successful. And I will ask basically Michelle to come over here to talk more about the successful projects.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Some of you remember the LCI that we did back in 2012. I just want to highlight the goals of the LCI back then. It was to clarify the vision and future market potential for the area, provide additional detail to the city's comprehensive plan. Remember, it was right after we did our first comprehensive plan, and so we wanted to do a small area plan that would get into more details there. Also offer recommendations to improve the local zoning regulations and incentives for appropriate future development and redevelopment. Well, we can go on about that. After our LCI was done, we moved into doing the form-based code and TDR. And I'll talk a little bit about that. The last goal was to prioritize the public involvement projects, identify funding sources, and move key projects towards implementation. So like I said, the form-based code and TDR was one of our biggest implementations that came out of that LCI. Soon afterwards, we had an assisted living facility that went in at Webb and Highway 9, and that project needed 3.11 TDR units. Also, there was a Highway 9 storage facility that went in needing 2.825 TDR, and another Webb Road storage needing 4.17 TDR. Now, these TDRs are transferred development rights that came out of the form-based code project, and it helps to preserve acreage out in the AG1 zoning to keep those parcels from development. In total, we placed 21.7 acres in permanent conservation resulting from the form-based code and TDR just in the Highway 9 area. So that, of course, all resulted from our work with the LCI. Other projects that came about, there was an assisted living facility along Highway 9 north of Bethany Bend. As you know, Pike Nursery just opened last year, and there were several other townhome developments. One of the big projects that transportation projects that came out of this LCI was the Bethany Bend realignment design. That project was one of the fundings that was eligible based on the LCI. Also, there were other traffic signal installations and sidewalk improvements. And when Sarah comes up in the next presentation, you'll hear about some other funding sources that were offered funding opportunities that were offered based on some of the projects that we did for the LCI. And if you have any questions, I can come back, but Parag will continue.
So why do we want to update our Deerfield LCI plan at this stage? So if we get the funding and the plan gets adopted, it will be done in 2020. So the plan will be around 7 to 8 years old, and we do want to update our plans after 7 to 8 years. So number one, this plan is at a time that we want to update this plan. We want to respond to the changes that have been in the community since 2012. We want to take a closer look at Highway 9 web road areas. There has been some demand in the Target shopping center area. So we do want that all those developments should be informed by the updated study. As Michelle just mentioned, there has been some demand of new TDRs. So we are doing this study on TDR program analysis. And one of the things that we are basically looking at how we can basically increase the demand of the receiving areas. So we do have enough demand for the sending areas, but we do not have enough demand for the receiving areas of TDRs. So this study will look at how we can basically increase the demand of those TDRs. We will also looking at the relation between MARTA, Avalon, Mickens Fair interchange projects and widening of the Highway 9 project. As currently mentioned, our existing 2012 LCI plan did not look at placemaking. And the new comprehensive plan in 2016 focused a lot about creative placemaking. So this new LCI plan will also be focusing upon how we can create a sense of place in our Deerfield corridor. As you know, we also have an Arts Council now, City's Arts Council. So we will also be involving City's Arts Council into our placemaking strategy for this corridor. So this is sort of a schedule of this grant application. If City Council is in favor of submitting this grant application, you will be sending a resolution. You will be voting on a resolution in your next meeting. It's around 80-20 match. So 80% comes from the ARC, 20% is the local match. We are planning to submit the grant application of around $125,000. So out of $125,000, 80% will be coming from ARC and around $24,000 something will be coming from the city match. The application deadline is Friday, that's March 29th. The contract, if the city is one of the winners of this grant, the contract will be in place in June or July, and the project will be running to fall of 2020. One of the things which I will mention is the project boundary. So initially, in 2012, we worked with City of Alpharetta, but the staff has already spoken to ARC this time. They will not basically force us to work with City of Alpharetta. They are okay for the grant application. We are submitting the Deerfield form-based code area as the project area, as the study area for now. And if we receive the grant application, we can refine the study area also. But again, the grant application will not include City of Alpharetta. The grant application will only include the form-based code area. That's us from us. Michelle and I are happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Matt?
And I'll just make a comment. I think the LCI program is a great program. It was one of the first things we did when I got on the council in 2012. And obviously we did a lot of work, groundwork during that time. And that's evidenced by just a lot of the things that we've had going on here in Crabapple, as well as with the form-based code, et cetera. So what's also exciting about it, though, is it's relatively a new federal program. So other cities have taken advantage of this. And the video I thought was great that Steve, you shared today, too. It shows just how other people, other communities have thought of other ideas as well that we might be able to incorporate into the Deerfield area also. So I think the application of the Milton Arts Council is a great time for that too. So there's a lot of things with this I like. I think it's a great program. I'm definitely excited to see what the next 8 years will bring if we do this.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, City, if you can please call the next item.
Our final item is discussion of Deerfield Connectors Trail and Greenway connection. Ms. Sarah Leaders.
And based on the audience, I'm going to assume there's no public comment.
There's correct.
All right, good evening again. This presentation is going to discuss some available federal funding for a project we started in 2014, which was looking at connections to the Big Creek Greenway. And so tonight we just wanted to look at if we want to accept the federal funds and move forward in that process. So I'm going to go over the planning history on this area of trails, the project history, some other projects underway, and then the funding. So these were some of the planning documents that contained discussion of trails in the State Route 9 Deerfield area. It goes all the way back to 2007 and up to the 2018 North Fulton Transportation Plan. Like I said, it was originally called the Milton Multi-Use Trail Connection Study, and it was originally identified through the first North Fulton Transportation Plan. So we were awarded federal money to do a concept scoping phase for the project. We got local match contributions from both Alpharetta and the North Fulton CID towards that local share of the funding. This was one of the graphics that came out of that study. Looked at some loops and then various connections to get over to the Big Creek Greenway. Looked at several alternatives along Georgia 400, including where it would be possible to go under 400, where it would be possible to go over 400, at non-interchange crossings, roadway crossings over 400, and then at interchange crossings as well. One of the crossings over, originally looked at as a pedestrian bridge. We later evaluated it as a longer-term goal for a new roadway connection over 400. So that's a longer-term project and would involve coordination with City of Alpharetta. This is approximately at Webb Road Extension, so at Morris and Deerfield and Webb. So it's a new possible connection. So instead of just the pedestrian feature, this looked at a roadway feature, but it was evaluated in the most recent North Fulton Transportation Plan and was put as a lower tier project, pending more coordination and outreach. This was the project that came out of the 2014 study. So it was connecting from Cambridge High School down to Webb Road, Deerfield Parkway, to Webb Bridge Road, and over to Alpharetta High School and the Big Creek Greenway there. With this alignment, about 60% of it is in Milton and 40% would be in Alpharetta. Another study that this area was looked at was with the Trails Blueprint. It was identified as one of the connector possibilities. And this particular map shows using Windward Parkway as the connection point. Some development that's happened since this plan is on the left is a graphic from the Managed Lane project that GDOT's looking at that would propose some new express lane exits and entrances on 400, as well as some of the general purpose access roads or overpasses that would need to be upgraded with those managed lanes. And then on the right is our T-Splosh project, the Morris Road widening that ties into the McGinnis Ferry interchange. The State Route 9 widening project, one option we explored with this funding was if we could tie into the roadway project with an underpass, and if that would be eligible for federal fundings. With the state funding that's currently planned for State Route 9, it wasn't eligible to use federal money for a project that tied into the widening. Some further development since the study as well have been how Forsyth and Alpharetta Big Creek Greenway connections connect. The blue is one option that Alpharetta is looking at to tie into the black line, which is the network to the Forsyth County Greenway. And then looking at the funding, have some local capital accounts for trails and sidewalks. We also have T-SPLOST pedestrian funding, and then this potential, it's a surface transportation block grant is the funding category through the federal funds, and that money would be allocated to design of a trail system, and it's $400,000 in federal money with a $100,000 local match. So kind of our next steps is if we want to pursue the federal funding in this area, we would, GDOT would draft a project framework agreement. That would be our next step, and we would bring that to a council meeting for approval. We'd need to identify our local funds we'd use as a match, select a consultant, and the first step would be updating the concept that was done in 2014, which would involve some public involvement and coordinating with the Milton Trail planning process that's underway. So are there any questions?
If we apply for, federal funds, is there any negative to that?
Just the amount of time it takes to get through the process.
Longer if they're involved.
And sometimes the design can be more costly because it involves more environmental studies. But with the federal match of $400,000.
Anybody else, Laura?
And that's for the part that's going to go to the Greenway through Morris Road?
It would, go back to. So the original plan was to continue there's some sections of trail down Cogburn, so it would be to fill in those gaps on Cogburn, Webb, and then either along Windward or along the Morris Road up to McGinnis Ferry and across.
Okay, so that sounds really good to me. I mean, the filling in the gaps within our city would be a priority, up and down Cogburn Road, and that loop. Because I just see people walking on the side, the shoulder all the time, and it's dangerous. And so if we could get just the details of what that would, I fully support it. So, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
All right. We will move into executive session. We added that to our agenda. Discuss land acquisition. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, make a motion that we move into executive session to discuss land acquisition.
Do I have a second? All right. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.